Okay, guys, here we go again. We're going to actually read this sonnet one more time, and I want you to think about it when I'm reading it the second time and we're looking at it together, and please follow along with me. I want you to think about what is this one, because remember, if we go back here, the first thing is that it can only be about one idea, and Shakespeare wrote a lot about love and um, a woman of the opposite sex. So I want you to think about what is he trying to say here? What is the one idea he's trying to convey here? And a lot of times what Shakespeare does is he gets through these three quatrains right here, so these 12 lines right here, and then gets to the last two, the couplet, and he really makes his statement, what he's trying to say, that one idea. He wraps it up and summarizes it in those last two lines of the couplet here. So let's read it one more time and see if you can think about it. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. So, if we look at this, and you may have picked up on kind of the tone here of it, and let's actually go to slideshow view here, so it's bigger for you all. So, if we actually look at this, you probably picked up on, he gives some kind of description here of what his mistress is not described as. And you would be more, wouldn't you be more apt to think that possibly Shakespeare might say, my mistress' eyes are like the sun instead of nothing like the sun, or coral is not more red than her lips, or my mistress's lips are far more red than coral, and her breasts are white as snow. But he says here they are dun, and dun is usually the color we associate brown, gray, tallow, just kind of maybe not brown, but kind of like a gray, dirty kind of feeling to it. So this description he's creating here, and then he goes on, if we can continue. So we see that her eyes are kind of dull, they're not like the sun, and her lips are not red, they're not highly visible. And then her breasts are, and I'm sure you all are laughing because I said the word breasts, are nothing to be proud of. And her hairs be wires. If her hairs are wires, then black wires grow in her head. So usually, I wouldn't want somebody describing my hair as wiry. So here we have Shakespeare, who has created this question in our head of, why is he kind of making fun of his mistress, of the woman that he supposedly loves? So it does create this. So if we look here, I have seen, he continues on with this description here, I have seen roses damasked in, sorry you guys, I'm learning all this technology. I have seen roses damasked red and white. So yes, roses come in beautiful red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheek. So her skin, again, is not very bright. It's kind of dull. And in some perfumes, and he talks about there's more delight than in her breath that reeks. So not only do her eyes not glow, and she's got wiry hair, and cheeks now that we know are just dull and don't have any red to them, and that now we know that she has stinky breath. But he says here, I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. The kind of the transition we have here is when he says, I love to hear her speak. And then we start to wonder, he loves her. So what is he really trying to do here? That even though her music, her voice is not as beautiful as music, he still likes to hear her. So it's in this switch up here, and Shakespeare often does this. He'll put a transition here. I love to hear her speak. And we kind of start to switch gears in our mind here and think, oh, maybe this is sweeter than I thought it was going to be. Maybe this isn't sarcastic. Maybe he's not making fun of his mistress. So we want to read on further and see what he has to say. And he says, I grant I never saw a goddess go. So when he says that, have you ever heard a statement that that when lovers are in love, their feet don't touch the ground, that they kind of float because they're in the clouds and that's all they can think about. And that's kind of what Shakespeare is referencing here when he says, sorry, my dog's barking. All kinds of disturbances at home, guys. Sorry about that. So that he says, I love to hear her speak. Well, I know. And I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. So we get the feeling that, you know, this isn't the beginning of their relationship. Their feet are on the ground. They're grounded. They're not in that state of being in love and just floating and smiling and you know, just kind of in their own little world. And so we think, well, maybe this is a real, genuine, old kind of love. So we get to the couplet and we know that he's going to wrap it up and he's going to summarize it here. And this is where the wording and the vocabulary gets a little bit old here. So we have to really look and look at the word choice here. So let's look at right here. And yet, you guys are probably going to kill me here. All right. And yet by heaven, I think my love as rare. So he does. He says it. The hint we had. And yet by heaven, I think my love is rare. So what is so rare? We want to know what is so rare about his love. As any she belied with false compare. We read that and we go, what in the world does Shakespeare mean by that? And this is where Shakespeare likes to write almost in code, and you have to twist it out and put it together like a piece of puzzle, which is why I love Shakespeare so much. He's so brilliant in how he uses his words. So what we have to think here is we have to define this word belied. And so belied means something that has been implied but not been implied correctly. So if we look at this, she, as any she belied. So she, as any woman who has been misrepresented might be a better word for us to understand. We don't use the word belied very often, but we do understand what it means to be misrepresented. So, like any woman who's been misrepresented by an exaggeration of comparison. So if we look at this, and let me go back to regular mode here. So if we look at this and we think of it as a woman, I think my love as rare because she is like a woman who has been misrepresented by an exaggerated comparison. So what Shakespeare is really saying here, my woman is real, you all. I don't have to compare her to roses or to the sun. And I don't have to say she smells as beautiful as perfume, because my mistress, she is a real human being. She wakes up in the morning like everybody else, and she has got stinky breath. And you know what? I love her for that anyways, because she's a human and she doesn't have to be some picture perfect doll. And this would have been, as you can imagine, back in those days, in 1500s and the 1580s or so, this would have been quite revolutionary, because women were supposed to be prim and proper and sit pretty and look pretty and do pretty things like make needlepoint and paint and learn French and play the pianoforte. So all these beautiful things that women were supposed to be, these porcelain little dolls. So Shakespeare comes out and say, you know what? I love my woman for her humanness, for her faults and for her not so perfectness. And this is probably one of my favorites of all time, Sonnet 106. And yes, there are 105 other ones that go before this, and I think almost 100 after that. So he did write a lot of sonnets, but this is one of my favorite ones because of kind of this little twist that he does here at the end with these two lines. And yet by heaven, I think my love is rare because I love her for being a human. And I think what he was trying to say is, why do women have to be so picture perfect for us to love them? And Shakespeare picked up on that. When was it? And this was probably written in the 1590s. I think he started writing poetry. So guys, that was 400 years ago. And women are still fighting that battle today a little bit, of expectations of what they need to look like, perfect in the magazines, perfect, on YouTube with all their makeup on, and perfect on TV and the movies. So, and it is getting a little bit better, but Shakespeare picked up on this 400 years ago. So what I want you to realize is Shakespeare noticed things about human beings, and you're going to see that in Romeo and Juliet. He was a master perceiver or understander. That's not a word. Or master perceiver or master, almost like he had the ability to really see deeply into people and what makes the tiny little nuances that make humans tick, and the different personalities and character traits that make up a human being. And you're going to see that in Romeo and Juliet, where he just understands Romeo to the core, and he understands Juliet and her parents. And that's what makes Shakespeare so exciting, is that he doesn't show us the surface. He goes deep inside of his characters, and he shows us all their ugliness mixed in with all their beauty. And I think you can see that so well in this poem here. So that being said, because I don't have much time here, I want to talk about your assignment. And there's actually a student, you can go back and read this on your own, but this is your assignment. So your assignment is, you're going to go on Canvas, where I showed you in the discussion group, and you are going to, when you receive, you're going to sign up in a sign up group, and then you're going to receive, somebody's going to receive the group leader, and I talked to you about that. Then your group, you're going to write a sonnet that meets the qualifications of a Shakespearean sonnet, which we saw on slide 2, those 7 characteristics of 3 quatrains and a couplet at the bottom, 14 rhyme lines, all of those qualifications you need to. It needs to be about one idea. In your group on Canvas, you're going to get a leader. That leader needs to, on the day that it's due, make sure that it is sent to me, typed out and sent to me. And that person also needs to tell me what each person contributed. So if Timmy didn't do anything in the group, then you just say Timmy didn't participate in this group. If Sunny wrote half of the lines, then tell me Sunny wrote like 6 of the lines, or 7 of the lines technically. If James wrote 4 of the lines, and tell me he wrote lines 1 through 4 or something like that. And I have to wrap this up in 45 seconds. It is due on Monday at 10 a.m. So I will be online if you have questions about this, so please let me know. All right, guys, have fun with this and cooperate in your groups. Really, really important. And team leader, be a leader, okay? A kind, gentle leader. All right.